We'll move to the 2018 graduation rate annual report. Dr. Swift.
Thank you, Vice President Johnson and trustees and members of the community. This is our annual graduation report. I want to thank the Performance Committee because they plowed through this data with us last week and really served the discussion, which is so important for us and for our community. Trustees, graduation data, as we all know, is everybody's business. It is the responsibility of the student, of the parents and families, of the schools, and the community. We're all working toward that goal of getting students through a K-12 education, and we know what the data says if folks are not able to achieve that pivotal point of a high school degree, a high school diploma. We know that the work toward getting a high school diploma begins in the first days of preschool. Our preschool teachers work toward that, and so does everyone else along the way. We all play a part, and it extends throughout the child's experience. We felt like we would open this presentation and share with you, sprinkled throughout, the stories of our students, because every single number we're looking at this evening represents the stories and the voices and the experiences of each of our students as they've come through our system. And so we're going to open, if you will, trustees, with Skyline graduates. They'll be graduating in 2019. They are Yura Audrey Gao and her family, who moved to Ann Arbor from China when she started 6th grade. She has attended Slauson and Skyline. And also, she'll be joined by Arik Rory, who's been in the Ann Arbor Public Schools throughout his K-12 experience. Arik attended Bryant, Pattongill, Scarlett, and Skyline. So let's open and enjoy the voices of these beautiful students. Thank you.
So I actually came to the U.S. when I was in 6th grade, so learning English was a major part of a challenge. So I kind of learned to learn English in a matter of a few months, had to challenge myself. So I think just keeping my grades up and several AP English classes were a pretty big challenge. But yeah, I think I did it. I think the education I get here is very, very nice, and the teachers, like, again, it's very supportive, and I think just being at Skyline has helped me with my study habits and definitely prepared me for the future. Well, I'm waiting on a few more colleges, but I want to go to big public universities, and I intend to major in economics or business. I like the diversity in big colleges, and I want and the network connections are bigger with bigger universities, and I just want to branch out and explore new things. And I think the resources at bigger universities are generally more, so I can take advantage of that.
From day one, like my first time ever being in school, I started off with writing my name, and now I'm doing pre-calculus. So I feel like the whole spotlight kind of just leads you to the point where you're like, well, now you're ready for college. Like, you're over here stressing, but like, you're not really stressed because I'm like, I already know how to do these things. Like, college is like, you're gonna have to do this and be able to do this. I'm like, I've been doing this since like 10th grade. So it's kind of like normal. So I feel like Ann Arbor really does a great job like setting you up for that success. The biggest challenge I ran into was just like kind of trying to fit in a little bit, because, you know, sometimes I just be like, oh, well, I'm the only black kid in the class, which was fine. I just knew I was going to a predominantly white district, which was fine. But after I got over that, I was like, all right, well, I might be one of the only ones, but guess what? I can make a ton of friends. And the only hard thing was AP classes, because like that was tough, but it's okay, because like I know I can trust people. And now I think that kind of opened me up to it, just being able to trust a lot of people and from different backgrounds. So it was kind of nice. Easy. Don't be afraid to make new friends, and don't be afraid to take things that challenge yourself, because honestly, if you challenge yourself, you only get better. And if you really want to succeed in this district, pay attention, go to class, don't fight with everybody. You're gonna need it because learning how to work with other people that you don't know is a life skill. So that's really important. I'm down to 5 schools: Ohio Northern, College of Worcester, Kalamazoo College, St. John's in Minnesota, and I forget the last one. But I'm gonna be deciding at the end of March.
Very good. Those are the best part of the presentation. Trustees, I want to direct your attention to your support documents, and we will have all of this on the website so that anyone and everyone who is interested, we are very vigilant about producing our annual reports, and they come year-round throughout the year. This is one of many major reports that we share, and all of that data is right on our website. But trustees, this page of definitions is something the committee spent time on it, but you should glance at that if you need a refresher. You remember that we talk about the cohort group. That is how the state figures the graduation rate. So that cohort group is established at the beginning of the 9th grade year. And you remember in the old days, trustees, Ms. Landefeld would remind us that students have an ID number, and they are tracked across the state of Michigan by that ID number. So if they leave Ann Arbor and enroll somewhere else, that grad rate is still calculated because they are tracked through that single number that they're identified by. Remember these other definitions besides the cohort group. So when you get to graduation, it's the number who've graduated as the numerator and the cohort group number as the denominator. And so that is the calculation, and yet there are lots of ins and outs on that. If a student leaves the country or leaves the state, they do not count against us. If they leave the district for another district where they're unsuccessful in graduating, or if they leave the district and fail to enroll in another district, those rates still come back to that cohort group. So if you keep this handy throughout the presentation, you'll have those definitions. And then trustees, just tour through your stack of documents. I think Ms. Hilton attached those right behind your slideshow, correct? They're right back there. I just want to point out the 4 and 5 year chart is very helpful, and we've done that by student groups. And then one of your favorite pieces to keep nearby are the demographics of the comparative districts. So our fiercest competitions are with ourselves. So we measure against ourselves first, but then we measure out in concentric circles, looking at other Washtenaw districts. Unfortunately, the other Washtenaw districts are not as diverse as we are. So then we go out to compare to the highest performing districts in the state, and then to a set of districts who are more like Ann Arbor, although there are few like Ann Arbor in Michigan. The 4, 5, and 6 year rates are here by student group. As I said, the demographics by other districts, which is very important to have close. And then we also have just a set of notes that was developed by Mr. DeAngelis regarding many of the strategies that we've used. Performance committee members, I actually followed up on our discussion about the spreadsheet, and I have examples of the 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade spreadsheets that are kept at each high school that show how many students may be off track. how many courses they're off by, and the column that says what is the remediation plan, and then the checkup and follow through, did they complete that remediation plan? So we are doing that in every one of our high schools, and yet we all know that we need to do more. As our Bryant Pattongill parents have shared so beautifully this evening, more needs to be done. Our work is in progress. So we wanted to begin with 5- and 6-year rates because the story of Ann Arbor Public Schools is that over time, we graduate 93% of our students. Now, we want to break that down, though, and talk about each student group. For trustees who may not recall, or those of you who are new on the board, I do want to draw your attention to, it was beginning with the 2011 class in Michigan that the bar was raised. So when we compare, we think about this change, it added the 2 additional years of math, so 4 credits in math that include Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. It also added an additional credit in science, so 3 credits in science, and then a half credit in the arts. And interestingly enough, sometimes students talk to me about that half credit, where I would think they would talk to me about the math or science. But at any rate, it's kind of always interesting. Trustees, this is the story. Our challenges remain in 5 key and critical areas. You know them by heart, as do I. And that is for African American students, for students who are impacted by poverty, for special needs students, for Hispanic students, and for students for whom English is their second or third or more language. What are highlights in this year's data are that we see improvements. We see improvements this year in the all number, 4-year on-time all graduation. We see improvements. Trustees, we've been watching and working toward improvements with students of poverty, and we do see that this year. For the first time, we see an uptick there. We see improvements with second language students, with multi-ethnic students, and with Latino Hispanic students. Unfortunately, and we are monitoring this very closely, we still see dramatic disparities, as you know, and you will see them with those 5 areas that we repeat, and we keep our eye on them. Let's look at the 5-year and 6-year cohort. On our 5-year cohort, you can see we're at 92%. Our 6-year cohort is at 93%. You might say to yourself, what does a 5-year or 6-year graduate, what's their story? And we ask ourselves that question. And so, trustees, we went out and found some stories that we are excited to share with you this evening. You may not realize it, but through Pathways High School, we also host an adult ed program. And the mission of our adult ed program is to help students at every age to wrap back and achieve that life benchmark of a high school diploma. And so you're going to hear in this set, first the story of a 5th-year graduate, a beautiful story, and then we'll move on and take just a break and then let you meet a recent adult ed graduate. The 5th-year students are LaMarcus Marty Roper, who has attended the Ann Arbor Public Schools since he started here in 6th grade at Scarlett Middle School, and then he attended Pioneer, and finally he is completing or has completed at Pathways. He was originally part of the 2018 cohort. That would have been the year of his cohort. LaMarcus recently completed at the end of the trimester, so just a couple weeks ago, his requirements, his coursework for graduation this year, and we'll look forward to seeing him the first week in June at the Pathways graduation. The video also includes Oliver Oz Tibbs, who came to Pathways when his family moved to Ann Arbor. Oliver was a member of the 2018 cohort. His family sought out Ann Arbor because of our inclusiveness and acceptance and openness, and I want him to share more about that with you, which you will see. Oliver was a member of the 2018 cohort, and he is all set to graduate in the spring of 2019. So meet these beautiful students.
Coming from Scarlett High School, everyone was telling me it was just a big jump. You can get into clubs, it's college on the far end of it, and just so much stuff to do afterwards. So it was a scary experience at first, because it's just so much at first. And I started off at Pioneer, so when I went there, I saw it and I was like, okay, it's not that bad getting into the water. It's just a big ocean of different students and different vibes going on at once. But it was good at the starting. Then as time went on, I realized that high school was, a responsibility at the same time. It's not just an experience to where you can, have fun and you flourish, which that is important too. So my high school experience was kind of mixed. I got involved in a lot of things that helped me push forward my future a lot, but I also kind of fell off at certain points too, only because of the massive amounts of, like I said before, responsibility that came behind it. So it was a little shaky for the first couple of years, but my senior year, I came to Pathways, and I was able to just pick myself up and just make it more fun. And I never thought you could actually do that, make high school more fun than it already was. But with knowledge and getting involved in different opportunities that are thrown at you, it can be an experience. My biggest obstacle was attendance and distance. I stay in Ypsilanti. I stay towards the West Willow side, south side. So I'm an Advent Ypsilanti resident. But I always went to Ann Arbor schools, so I would take trips back and forth to get there. But obviously with that, with the distance in between, when the weathers get extreme, particularly in the winter, it can be troubling sometimes for me to get back and forth to school. And that started hurting me my 9th and 10th grade year of high school, and even my 11th grade when I was at Pioneer. I was just missing a lot of school. And by the time I actually got there, I realized that, it was so much work. It was so much stuff that was piled up and it was missing. It was like, I was slowly sinking. And so my biggest thing was just falling behind and being able to catch up with, the rest of the race. So that was one of my biggest struggles, and even the times that I was able to make it to the school with Pioneer being so massive, it's like, I'm not the only kid who's probably there struggling. So, when I did actually wanted to go and grab some help, it was too much of a reach for me. So I kind of fell off with that. But as I went on, though, my 11th grade year came to an end, and I realized that my senior year, I was academically struggling, and I realized that I didn't want to sink. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to have my name encased in stone across my diploma when I walk across. So I realized what I had to do. So I had to buckle down, and I was like, I have to go. I have to do what I need to do to finish and be successful. So I came to Pathways my senior year, and ever since I started, it has been nothing but just upward movement, whether it was, the little victories as in turning a homework assignment, or the large victories as to completing a class course. I had all of them here. So I can say I ran victorious as to coming from the academic hole I was in. I write, whether it's raps or prose or just anything, even like limericks or anything like that. I just love the art of writing and expressing myself through creative writing. So I do that a lot, and here at Pathways, they helped me promote that as well last year, and even this year too. I told them about a lot of poetry events around Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti that I do, and they helped promote it. Even a couple of teachers came to my events and supported me there too. So it was pretty fantastic. And then aside from the poetry, I also have been in a lot of peer mediation things to help me just do better with solving conflicts with, the everyday people that I even go to school with or am in a community with. So that was very fun with, CBTs and, peer mediations. I just love it. It's like, it's so many opportunities here to help bring the community together and help me as a person grow in my community as well. Just probably going to work, just build my foundation around me as I move forward. And I'm just going to keep writing poetry. I'm going to keep performing around Ann Arbor and do more around Ypsilanti as well as my home community. And, just get ready for college in the fall and just keep doing me, just keep doing positive things to keep myself moving forward and upward always. I will be going to WCC. I will be going there for creative writing, journalism, and some marketing.
First few years were pretty difficult. I went to a really homophobic school, and being one of the only gay kids became easy target. So after I came here, it was nicer to be in a much more accepting environment. And I just love how much one-on-one you get here as opposed to like a common ground high school. It feels like teachers actually care about you and your education here and like want you to do the best and will do whatever they can to make sure you do the best. We moved down here like 3 years ago, and my options were to go to whatever local Ann Arbor Ypsi high schools, and I chose to come here because my brother had gone to an alternative high school and it worked really well for him. I've had really bad attendance issues because I have some severe anxiety problems, but like I said, this seems like a very comfortable environment, so it's easier for me to be able to come here. It's definitely helped me with my comfort zone, so like I've been able to get my first job, and I've been doing a little volunteer work every once in a while. A few times I considered just going for my GED, but I really want to get my diploma. It's been my goal to get my diploma, so that just helps me get through it, I guess. Awesome. Well, I'm going to do a little traveling after I graduate, just around the States and around Canada for a little while. And then I'm going to go to WCC, get my basic reading, math sort of credits out of the way. And I don't know what I want my major to be yet, so I haven't decided on university.
Thank you, Mr. Cluley, for sharing those stories with us. When we think about the 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year graduation rates, when you look at those rates, I just want to show you 2 slides. This is the one, trustees, that our committee looked at. Performance committee saw right away that the yellow bars go together. That's the 2013 cohort. And so we developed an additional slide to really show you how it looks. And that is, you can see in the 2013 cohort that every year that passes since their graduation year, we have graduated more students. We're getting a higher percentage. And then you can see the 2014 cohort and all the way through. And you can see our 2017 cohort, and this is 2018 cohort there. But you can see that we're moving to 93% of our graduates in the 6-year timeline. As we look at the next slide, we wanted to look at that by student group. This is a busy slide, but I think it's an important one. And certainly we still observe the disparities. Those are not completely gone here. They're still here, but I do want to note that in those areas of concern, when you look at the 5-year, you can see on the 5th year for African American students, we've gone from 80 to 86%, still want to get to 100. And then on our students impacted by poverty, from 69 up to 78%. And then English language learners, Latinos, similar trends, with special ed from 63.6 to 75.8. And then our 2 or more races also coming up about 3%. So we can see that in our areas that we watch most closely, They are making significant progress on that 5th year, and we haven't created the slide yet, but they're also making even more progress on the 6th year. So that is just one piece of data that we wanted to look at. Now, that 6th year and beyond, those students who are 19 years of age and older, you might be thinking, how do we get those kids to graduate? We use a variety of structures and strategies in the district. Our Pathways program hosts an adult ed component. I've never met two more committed teachers than the teachers in that adult ed program over at Pathways. We're also using a program this year and last year called Grad Alliance that is facilitated at the state level. And it also works across the state to reach out to those, I noticed today the data, several million Michigan residents who are beyond the age of 19 and have not ever achieved a high school diploma. So Grad Alliance is focused on that group. I want you to hear from one of our adult ed graduates. Her name is Victoria Newell, and she joined the adult ed program planning to work for her GED. However, in the process, after meeting with our staff, they talked to her and they determined that she was a great candidate for a traditional high school diploma. And so they persuaded her that the regular high school diploma better met her needs than a GED. So through the program, Victoria has received her diploma. She's just gotten her first job, is on her way to a career, and I hope she makes time to attend the Pathways graduation because I very much want to shake her hand and congratulate her, as I know you all do. Mr. Cluley.
I came to do my GED, found out that I didn't need the GED program. I needed to do the high school completion. It was a struggle in the beginning, but I got through it. I worked hard and hard. One day I was in class, somebody by the name of Danielle came from Rainbow Rehabilitation Center and started talking about Rainbow. In order for me to get the job at Rainbow, I had to learn how to read and write. I buckled down on my reading and writing and filled out the application, applied for it, and from there, I got hired. I love my job, what I do. It's a caregiving job. After that, I continued to work on my high school diploma. I graduated with a high school diploma. I am still currently working at Rainbow. I am a manager now, and I am a homeowner. I would encourage everybody to do it. It's an amazing, it's a great feeling. I am in college now also. I am going to be a registered nurse. This program, it helps. It helps a lot. The teachers, Ms. Beth, Ms. Cheryl, Ms. G, these guys are amazing. They help push you to do what you love to do. I couldn't have done any of this. I couldn't have got this far without them. This school is amazing. I would encourage everyone to do it.
Even though we talk about the 4-year and 5-year rate, because that is a significant part of Ann Arbor Public Schools graduation story, you and I know that the focus across the state is on the 4-year on-time rate. So we'll spend the majority of our time this evening on that set of data. And here it is, the 4-year on-time rate. Ann Arbor Public Schools at 89%. That does include our WEOC programs, and you know that it is really a function of every single student as a member of that 9th grade cohort. You can see the national data. We don't have the updated yet. They will publish it later this year. And then the Michigan number at 81%. Let's look at the 4-year on-time graduation rate over time. And here it is, about 3% over the past 5 years. You might also note, trustees, as we go through these slides, that the size of the N group is on the bottom of the slide. And on some of these groups, we've actually had very robust discussions about how the size of the group is changing and how that might impact the data in some ways. Here's the comparison to Michigan, We don't think a lot about this comparison because, of course, we should outrank the state of Michigan. But I always do look at this page to see where are we close to the ranking of Michigan, because that's a concern. And you can see in those areas of concern, special needs students, students from poverty, and in other areas, those are the two main ones. Here, we are much closer in those areas to Michigan's numbers, so we're keeping our eye on that. These student groups are listed in alpha order, beginning with African American students, and you can see over the 5-year span here of time, and currently at 76.4%, and you can see kind of that trend in 2014, 2016, and 2018, hovering around that 75 to 76% range. We are concerned about this. We are in discussion. Trustees, we are anxious to get a plan. We have a robust plan, but we're anxious to up our game around our students, particularly in areas of concern, and this is the first one this evening. We said to ourselves, after comparing to ourselves, how do we compare to other districts with African American students? Now, the districts around us don't have a large representation, except for IPSI, of course, and they don't have a very wide variance. So we chose 5 districts there, and you can see on the left on this slide is the whole graduation number. And then on the right is that particular group that we're looking at, that student group. And you can see African American students there across the 5 districts. I know that Mr. DeAngelis, our high school principals, are in conversations to see what strategies we can learn. In fact, Mr. DeAngelis was in a peer district group meeting yesterday with other districts to see what are their strategies that we can learn from. We look at Asian students here at 97.7%, about a 2% increase over time. You can see that that in size has grown by about 20% over the 5 years. Economically disadvantaged students, this is one of the highlights, trustees, and I hope we'll pause and just, we're not taking a victory lap because there's still a huge disparity. But trustees, this is a number that for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, we've been working to get this number to move. And this is the first year ever that we've seen a little bit of movement. Again, we're not calling anything done, but that is encouraging to see a little bit of a change, particularly when you note that from last year to this year, the size of the group significantly larger. You're not surprised by that with the state of our economy, 318 students in that 2018 group. Here's how students of poverty are faring in other districts in Michigan. Again, we chose districts that had in-group sizes, somewhat similar to ours. And you can see there how our students are doing compared to those districts. Students from poverty. English language learners. The group has tripled in size, more than that, but has doubled in size in the last year from 28 students to 53 students. And you can see that data there, 77.4% graduation rate among that group of students. We ask ourselves the same question: how are second language students faring in other districts? You can see here, just looking against Farmington, Plymouth, Troy, and Utica, the comparison. Next, our Latino and Hispanic students. Again, we're not saying the job is done, but this is an area that we've long wanted to see progress in, and I just appreciate our second language team and Ms. Leanne Dickinson-Kelly and the leadership of our teachers and principals and leaders to really diligently focus on this group and the strategies that they need to support their learning, and a 13% increase while at the same time continuing to increase the size of the group is a good sign. Here you can see how Latino and Hispanic students are doing in surrounding districts. I will point out that Farmington in size is a little bit small. We try to only use above 30, but we wanted you to just get a comparison there as to how our Latino Hispanic students are doing compared to other districts. Caucasian students, we can see about a 3%, 2.9% increase over time. That group has become smaller, just a little bit though, about 11% difference. Another group we're very concerned about, I want to chat with you more about this tonight, trustees, is our students with an IEP that have special needs. And you can see we're this year at 60%, 60.1%. We are concerned about that. And then on the next slide, you can see how that compares to other districts. And I want to talk to you more about this particular area. And on your definitions page, I want to bookmark a conversation around personal curricula, which is allowed by the state for students with IEPs where they may receive some accommodation on their graduation rate. Trustees, we have not done a lot of that. It is certainly allowed, and our teams are aware of it. But as we look at our data, and I asked Ms. Lewis, Executive Director of Special Education, to check other large districts in the state to see how many of those students in those districts were using that personal curricula as a way to get themselves to a 4-year graduation rate. And I'm going to share that data with you. We're still collecting it. But we use it probably fewer than one hand of students in this graduating class. And we're aware that other districts, for example, Utica, please note this here, this difference, are using it more consistently. So we want to ask a question about that this evening and ask your thoughts on whether we might have your blessing to investigate that even further. So we're noting special ed students in other districts, and then we would move to students of more than one race. So trustees, you recall that just a few years ago, the federal guidelines started allowing for students to choose this category, kind of changed the game in terms of our metrics. And we currently have 117 students from that 2018 graduation year who are choosing this, and that area has seen improvement over time, and it is now 117 students, currently at 89.7%. So when we think about disparities, trustees, we always want to look at this slide, and it looks busy and noisy and distracting, but we're looking at the breadth of that band from the top group, the bottom group, to the top group to say how wide is our disparity. And you can see there easily 20 plus points between that lowest performing group and the highest performing group. So clearly we've got work to do there. And when you look at the next one, it's even busier, but it also includes special needs students and poor students, so we get it even a wider band there, a 30-point disparity pretty much in those last 2 years. So we confront this data, we see it, we recognize it, and we're on a path to realize improvement. We know it's the result of a fully aligned K-12 system. It's not just high school's job, it's everybody's job to get our students ready to graduate. So let's take a look at all student groups, and then we'll take a break and hear a couple more quick student stories. Here's our 4-year on time, and again, as Trustee Basquet has pointed out, this is that 5-year window between 2013, 2018, what has occurred in the Ann Arbor public schools. So you can see there where we are, and then we'll get busy about comparing ourselves to others. Mr. Cluley has for us some Huron, Huron IB Diploma Program class members of 2019. We spoke with Jason Wing, who has been in AAPS since his family moved here when he was in 3rd grade. And Jason attended Allen Scarlett in Huron. We also will hear from Keenan Basra, who's attended King, Pittsfield, Scarlett in Huron. Jason and Keenan will graduate in June.
Coming from Oakland Public Schools in California, this has been a really big change because, I mean, number one, you have way more funding for a lot of different activities like arts and stuff like that. And the education itself is much better, and just the facilities are amazing. So I think, honestly, I've had a really good time here, and I feel really much more prepared than I would have been. The program overall, it's been pretty good. There have been a couple hiccups, but I think that's just because it's the first year. I really enjoyed it overall. It's been a very fun experience, a different type of learning, which I really enjoy. Lots of writing, lots of writing. And that's not a bad thing. I was a decent writer coming into the DP program, and now I'm a more decent writer coming out of the DP program, and it really does force me to write a lot and do a lot of projects, which are kind of more real world, I guess, because you're not really doing too much testing in a job or anything. You're more trying to do projects, and you're trying to write up reports, and so I think that's really important that you get a taste of kind of a college like amount of report, but also kind of a college level report. I've had to do so many research projects that I feel like I'm prepared to do those in college later. I think I want to go to Michigan. I'm still waiting to hear back from some other colleges, but what my plan is that I want to go to Michigan and major in biochemistry, and then I want to go to med school.
I think the diploma program has really great roots, especially in giving students more responsibility and choice in their learning experience, and also giving students kind of a better idea of what college will feel like, is approaching problems with more of a holistic approach than just getting the grade. If I could change anything, I would prefer doing a block scheduling than just hour by hour, because there's a lot of classes where I would prefer having a 2-hour discussion on this one subject than crushing it into 50 minutes. And I think that's very beneficial because it will help just kind of fully go through the information, which is what IB is about, kind of going through the in-depth analysis of any topic. I'm still looking into colleges and schools. Right now, my number one pick is Michigan State, and I hope to major in neurology and to hopefully take mental health care to Africa, mainly around North and East Africa, which is where my parents are from and where my family is from.
Thank you, Mr. Cluley. We're now widen our circle of comparison, because we want to keep our eye on how we're doing compared to other folks across the state and across the country. this is our county-wide comparison. We're not very similar to any other districts in the county. The largest district among the other districts is a fifth of our size. And as you can see on your demographic sheets, trustees, the diversity is very low, except for in IPSI, and yet IPSI does not have, as we do, the breadth of diversity that we do in Ann Arbor. But we do think that this is an important comparison because we know that as folks relocate to Southeast Michigan, these are the numbers they're looking at to decide, where they might want to bring their children to school. The countywide comparison over time, you can just see the 2013 number to the 2018 number and how that looks in terms of progress over time across the county. High-performing districts, we always do this comparison on every single one of our achievement reports throughout the year, is we look at the top-performing districts in the state and how do we measure up to them. As you look at your demographic sheet, you see that we have very little in common in some other areas, poverty, impact, and diversity. But we do like this comparison because it shows how we're doing across the high-performing districts in the state. Here we are over time with that set of districts. And the next, we choose a set of districts that we feel like are the most similar among Michigan districts. And here they are: Farmington, Plymouth, Canton, South Lyon, Utica, and Walled Lake. And you can see their 4-year on-time rate compared to ours. And then similar districts over time, the 5-year span, ours compared to theirs. Trustees, this is the actual dropout rate. And you note that the dropout rate is computed by those students who fail to complete within the 4-year time frame, and those students who are not any longer enrolled in one of our schools or in another Michigan district. So this does include some students who have disappeared, so to speak, but this is our dropout rate on the 4-year cohort, and then on the next slide, our dropout rate on the 5-year and the 6-year cohort groups. And trustees, as we watch this last video, the questions I'm going to raise this evening, one of the things we talked about in Performance Committee is that in Ann Arbor Public Schools, we have not lowered our bar. And yet there are a couple of ways that the state allows. One, I would not consider necessarily lowering our bar. I don't mean to say that. But one is the personal curriculum. We've not accessed that in very systemic ways. We do it sometimes, but we've not done that in a big way. The second way is called a high school completion plan. Mr. DeAngelis is standing by, and he would be able to tell us a little bit more about that. But the summary is that it's a 21 credit plan instead of the 22. And Mr. DeAngelis, we understand it allows a student to maybe not do that final year of math. Is that correct? In other words, a 21 credit plan.
Yeah, to meet the Michigan Merit. The plan focuses on mainly meeting the Michigan Merit curriculum requirements.
Okay, all right. So there are some opportunities, and I guess I'm asking you trustees not to think about how can we post a better number. I think in Ann Arbor, we understand that we're here to serve students. Every student has a story, and we want to make sure they get the best service that they can. But are there opportunities to improve our service to secondary students in the Ann Arbor Public Schools? I'd like to leave that question on the table and turn to our final video. Following this video, Vice President Johnson, we would be prepared for any and all questions from the trustees. Thank you.
I think that there's a lot of exposure involved with going to a large public high school. Just learning about a lot of different types of people, meeting people I might not have met at another school, Ann Arbor being such a diverse community, learning all these different mindsets and all of these different cultures and ethnicities is definitely something I've gotten out of it, and it's something I didn't get exposure to in my previous school. I think it's navigation strategies mostly. Knowing how to navigate a big school is really important, and I feel like it takes a little bit of adjusting, but once you know kind of who your allies are, who's in your corner, people you can reach out to, the teachers you can connect with, once you kind of develop that network, the school shrinks a lot. I want to study PPE, which is philosophy, politics, and economics. It's kind of a program offered by a lot of schools in the country. Not actually sure about plans for the coming year. A lot of college decisions come out in the next couple weeks. So once I get those back, I'll be deciding where I want to attend school next year.
I came to Michigan or Ann Arbor this was 3 weeks before my freshman year. And I came from Uganda. My experience, like Jason's, was a very different experience, but what I came on here in the United States was that it's a very interesting education system. It's a very more complex and more in-depth thing in that you get to learn the material in a very, like, you learn more stuff and you learn how to do the material. It's more emphasizes on the writing skills. This was very different from what I have back in Uganda. I think one of the most important things that actually influenced me was like this Rising Scholars class. So I had a counselor called Dr. Edie, and I just walked into like one of the rooms that they were having a meeting, and then when I walked in, I was like, what is the Rising Scholars? Oh, apparently like a bunch of kids are selected for it, and I was like, could I join it? And she was like, yeah, definitely. And once I joined this program, I made a number of friends. And in that classroom, we had a lot of discussions with regards to social issues. I did not even know the difference between conservatives and liberal. And it's like, you got to learn more about that stuff in that classroom, the Rising Scholars class. And I felt like that was sort of a backdrop. And I had a counselor who was looking out for me all the time. I mean, I never had Power School. I did not know what Power School was, but you know, she always would send me an email. It was like, hey, take a look at your chem grade. She's like, you know, so I had a lot of support that helped me get along in the school system. Obviously, I had not used a computer before, so like everything was like an experience for me. My end goal is to become a lawyer. I'd like to defend people. I'd like to go back to Uganda and stand up for people's rights. I'd like to stand up especially for the minorities and women's back in Uganda. But as for undergrad, I'm more looking forward to studying subjects like philosophy, political science. I'm interested in economics, macroeconomics, and I have not yet decided on which college I'm going to go to, but I know what I want to study, and I'm really excited for college. Yeah. Right now, it looks like I would be going to University of Utrecht. This is in The Hague. It's a college that focuses more on, it has a liberal arts style of education. It focuses on human rights. It focuses on law. It's next to the International Criminal Court. So they have this whole experience where you get that real International Criminal Court. And that's good for like my background, which I wanted to study law. I'm also considering a lot of other liberal arts colleges here in the States. I'm also considering U of M. I'm considering, I'm waiting for other colleges too, yeah.
Thank you. I neglected to say, trustees, that was Skyline student Royal Raleigh Caswell, who came to Skyline as a 9th grade Schools of Choice student. And then the second one, we know Abdul Kazito because he has spoken to us before, but you remember that he arrived from his native Uganda just 3 weeks before the start of his 9th grade year and has done an extraordinary job. I do, trustees, have an expert, Miss Candy Roselle Williams, watching us to make sure that I'm accurate, and she corrects the in size on the slides is the total cohort number, which is always, your denominator, no matter, and not the total graduates. So thank you, Ms. Williams, for that clarification.